So you're building a bioactive enclosure, and you've seen videos online, people using expanding foam, dry lock paint, and of course substrate. You might have even seen the Gorilla Glue method. One of the most common things I certainly see is carving out foam, using marine grade silicone, and then dabbing on cocoa coir and leaving it to cure overnight. And the thing I hear pretty much every time is people saying that you should make sure you use this in a well-ventilated space because the smell from the silicone is pretty potent. Surely there's another way. It's always interesting to me just how different the pet reptile keeping world is from zoo work. It's even different from fish keeping. In the UK, if someone is sealing a wooden vivarium or a bioactive enclosure, it's really common for them to use something called marine grade silicone. A product that most online influencers use is HA6 from Bondit or Silicone 1 from GE in the States. And it's interesting because in the zoo world, we tend to stay well away from these silicones, and that's for good reason. But before I explain why, let's just clear up some terminology, because it's a pretty messy world out there. These tube products go by so many different names, and it's really common for them to be referred to as silicone or sealant or even caulk. And depending on where you live in the world and what you do as a job, you may use these terms interchangeably. For the sake of today's video, caulk is a water-based acrylic and chalk, nearly always white in color, and it's generally used in carpentry or in decorating of homes. It does come in a tube, but it's not something we tend to see used when we're building animal enclosures. A silicone, again for today's video, is a viscous liquid that comes in a tube and sets to a rubbery solid. It contains a chemical called silicon, which is a major ingredient, that most people get confused with. I'll try to make a point of emphasizing my pronunciation differently, with silicone being the tube product and silicon being the chemical or the ingredient. But the product I'll be introducing today is something else. It's a polymer called modified saline, or MS. Modern concoctions are referred to as hybrid or even tribrid polymers in the marketing. Polymers are also marketed as an adhesive or even a silicone alternative. And in the States, they may even be referred to as a caulk. This gets super confusing. And all three of these things, caulks, silicones, and polymers, are in one form or another a type of sealant. Again, this may not be how you normally say it, but for the sake of today's video, these are our terms. One thing that's normally true across the board is when we're using a sealant with animals, we don't want anything that can leach nasty chemicals over time. So generally people advise to stay away from sealants that are marketed as mold resistant or sanitary, often because they contain a biocide. And that's one of the reasons that people say HA6 is good for animals. People say it contains no biocides. However, there is misinterpretation out there about things like HA6 and Silicone 1. One of the things I do see said is that you should use 100% silicone. Now, people think they're using 100% silicon, and they definitely aren't. In fact, elemental silicon doesn't even exist in HA6 or Silicone 1. Instead, silicon is included as part of an elastomer called polydimethylsiloxane, and even that's only about 50 or 60% of the finished product. The other thing you'll see is the requirement to use marine grade silicone. Now, marine grade is also a bit of a misnomer because it just means resistant to shrinking when regularly exposed to water containing dissolved sodium. So it's suitable for use on a boat. It doesn't mean it's safe for aquatic life, and it certainly doesn't mean it's recommended for use with fish or other animals. Often, marine grade stuff contains very strong mold resistors. It's quite rare that the brands themselves actively say that something is safe for use with fish or aquatic life or amphibians or anything like that. So telling people to stick to only 100% silicone or marine grade silicone sets a lot of new keepers off on a specific bad trajectory and limits their perspective and even spreads misinformation. They're often then scared of trying something new, and it further separates the professional standards from hobbyists in a time when we're trying to ensure good community and minimize those divisions. Anyway, one of the products I see used when regularly building in zoos and in public aquariums is this, CT1. It's a viscous liquid that comes in a tube, and it's based on a polymer with much more versatile uses than silicone. It cures similar to a silicone, a bit like a hard solid. It's very rubbery and very strong, and it generally fits the same sort of criteria in that it's a sealant. But I think there's some aspects of CT1 that the people who stick to silicones are really missing out on. That ventilated space you need for silicone, the harsh smell of vinegar that stings your lungs and gets right up in your sinuses, CT1 doesn't have that. It's effectively VOC free, in fact. So there's no overpowering smell, and there's no need to open every window in the house for 24 hours. And there's no need for concern when using it in a room that has amphibians. That smell, by the way, that's the silicone curing. Generally, silicone cures acidic. It releases acetic acid. That's actually the constituent part of vinegar that you put on your food. That's why the smell is so similar. The problem with acidic cures is that it taints certain materials. It certainly isn't good practice to use silicone on rocks, wood, grit, metal, reflective coatings, anything that can react with acid, which is most of the things that are common to see in a terrarium. But CT1 doesn't have this issue. It cures completely neutral and is perfectly suitable for use with pretty much any material, natural or man-made. There's another super common material that silicone doesn't really work with. It's something that causes a lot of issues in enclosure builds. Do you know what that is? Quick interlude, just whilst I introduce you to Burrito, and thank you again for watching the video. and for subscribing if you consider doing that. You can check out the work we do on www.damascus.com. We do independent tests of all sorts of animal products, and we post regularly on the blog as well, so it's all on there. Here's Burrito. Oh, the camera's terrible. We do just want to say thank you, obviously, for checking that sort of stuff out for us. And thank you again for watching. And if there's something you want us to take a look at, from lighting to sealants, like today, you can let us know in the comments. And here's Burrito eating a worm. You can't see, of course. Anyway, back to the video. What did you think? What's that super important, common material that isn't compatible with silicone? A material we use every day. Water. Silicone won't stick to a wet surface, and you can't stick anything wet to it. This means when you're using silicone to help you make a nice background, you have to use 100% dry materials. This basically leaves two possibilities, coco coir and sand. And you can't use silicone to seal a terrarium or aquarium and then immediately fill it with water to check for leaks. You have to give it the full 24 hours cure before you test. And then once it has cured, that's it. You can't paint over it or anything like that. Paint doesn't stick to silicone. Well, guess what? CT1 sets even underwater, and it can be applied to wet surfaces and it still sticks. This means you can stick wet materials to your background, and you can use it to seal leaks, and then you can even paint over it once it's cured. This opens up a huge world of opportunity and creativity for keepers. CT1 is also food safe, non-toxic, skin safe, doesn't have any VOCs, won't slump, it's flexible, and it comes in a whole range of colours. And it's stronger than HA6. The bond is stronger, it can be stacked as many times as you need, and it goes without saying, it's safe for reptiles, amphibians, fish, invertebrates, and of course, you. And get this, once you've used them, it doesn't all cure in the tube. You can use them for a small job, and then when you're done, squidge a little bit out the end of the tube, leave that tiny bit to cure, and then in 6 months, come back, pull that little piece off, and you're good to go again. The stuff in the rest of the tube hasn't all gone off, so there's no more throwing away an entire wasted tube of sealant like you do with silicone. That is a lifesaver. Now, don't get me wrong, HA6 and silicone has served me well in many settings in the past, and I do have it on my shelf in the garage. But you know what else I have on the shelf? CT1. And every single time I've needed some form of sealant in the last 2+ years, I've reached for CT1 instead of silicone. There's never been a case in DIY jobs around the house, doing enclosure builds for animals, or any other thing that I've opted for silicone instead of CT1. If the job is big or small, it's been CT1 every single time. And that tells me all I need to know. It's a better product. And I've become known as a bit of a CT1 nerd to some people, and I think that's for the right reasons. But I've certainly tried a bunch of polymers. In many parts of the aquatics world, polymers like MS290 and MS300 are popular, both of which I've tried to great success. They're strong, they're versatile, and in the same way have many of the same positives as CT1. The thing with CT1 is that it's made in the UK, which I'm a big supporter of, and it comes in so many different colours, including natural browns and beiges. So there's a range of uses for it. And I've tried OB1 as well. It's got a bunch of colour options, which makes it enticing, and it's usually a few quid cheaper than the CT1 on things like Amazon. But every single time I've used OB1, I come out in some weird rash on my hands. And the owners of OB1, Bostik, the guys who have the cute gecko on the logo, very topical, make a range of cheaper polymer products. So I can't help but think it's one of those situations where they put much of the same product into different bottles to appeal to different customers. And I kind of don't like that sort of thing. And it's worth confirming at this point, nobody has paid me, nobody has sent me any freebies, I've not been asked to make this video, I don't make any money from the sale or the production of any of these products or their sister products. I just really want to see the pet world catch up with changes in technology the same way that the zoo world has. I see silicone recommended by reptile influencers and sold in specialist reptile shops all over the UK. It's one of those small things, and it's a bit of an age technology, but I think a lack of up-to-date training has meant it's sticking around way past its time. Personally, I'd love to see CT1 or another one of the polymer sealants take its place as a go-to product. And I think it would really help bring the reptile hobby up to the 21st century at long last. Here in the UK, a premium brand called Viperia uses and recommends CT1, and the use of a high-quality sealant showcases their premium approach to production. It's great to see, and I hope more companies follow this trend. But what do you think? Have you ever used CT1, MS290, MS300? Let us know in the comments. And if you have any other examples of old-fashioned or out-of-date products that are still used to this day, let us know again. We'd love to shine a light on things that are aged in this hobby. But for now, I'm off to go and fix my kitchen sink with, no prizes, some CT1. So I'll see you when I see you.